Psychiatry for a Mad World. An extract from the book. Chapter 5. Nutters, Psychos and Lunatics. Dr. Zab sat at his desk looking at a recording on his view screen. Hugh knocked at the door. "Come in, Hugh," called Zab. Hugh went in. "Good morning, Hugh. How are you feeling today?" "Fine. I keep telling you that." "Good. Well, I have something I want to ask you about, if that's okay." Dr. Zab turned the view screen round to Hugh and pressed a button. There was a recording of Hugh talking from a previous session. "Well, I am normal. I don't hear voices. I'm not some sort of psychotic serial killer. Yes, I'll admit there are loads of nutters on our planet. God knows I've met enough of them. But I'm not a psycho. I'm just a normal bloke. So if you don't mind, I'd like you to send me home now, and you can find a real head case to give your therapy to." "Do you remember saying this, Hugh?" said Zab. "I think so." "Can you explain what you meant by psychotic, nutters, psycho and head case?" "Well, you know, people who are mental. People who need a psychiatrist. I told you before I'm not one of them." Hugh was still confused. "And what exactly does psychotic mean to you?" "Well, people who attack other people, I guess. Lunatics." "So you are saying the word psychotic means dangerous and mentally ill. Tell me, Hugh, have you ever had psychosis?" "Well, no." "Have you ever met anyone who has psychosis?" No." "Well, have you ever read any books on it?" Hugh paused, feeling slightly embarrassed. "No." "So how did you reach your conclusion about what psychosis means?" "Well, I guess I saw it." "Where did you see it, Hugh?" Hugh felt no room for manoeuvre and was forced to admit where he had gained his opinion. He formed the word quietly. "Films?" Dr. Zab paused on obtaining the answer which he had anticipated. "Good, I think we have touched on something. Let's have a closer look and see what we can find." "So you see, Hugh," continued Dr. Zab, "the people you call psychos are of no threat to anyone else, and the mentally ill people were often made unwell by the people around them. They weren't born ill, they were made ill." "Right," said Hugh quietly. He remained unconvinced and wasn't sure where all this was heading. "OK, well, why don't we see how your clone is getting on? We programmed him with your old thought patterns, so he is living just as you used to do before we beamed you up." At that, Zab operated his view screen and zoomed down to Hugh's workplace at the post office. The clone was sorting parcels when Susan, a colleague, arrived on her bicycle for her shift. She parked up, took off her bicycle clips and the 2 woolly hats she was wearing. She found that one wasn't warm enough in the depths of winter. Hugh's clone smirked as she walked by and made a fake coughing sound, spluttering out, "Nutter!" and then added in fake apology, "Oh, excuse me." Susan had heard it before. She knew people thought she was odd. It happened regularly at work. She was the target, the one the bullies liked to pick on. It made her very unhappy. "Now, Hugh," said Zab, "we can have our computer make a forecast for the future based on what you have just seen if we press this pink button here." With that, the view screen showed Susan's life for the next few months. Hugh watched more instances of his colleagues picking on Susan, belittling her, playing pranks and passing her over for promotion. Finally, for Susan, the stress which she was holding in had to make itself heard. She was sitting alone at home one evening, thinking about the bullies, when she broke down and without warning her eyesight ceased to work. Susan was hospitalised, not in a regular hospital, but in a mental health unit. Her sudden blindness was a symptom of the stress that her work colleagues had put her under. With support, the staff at the hospital managed to restore her eyesight, and in time they gave her new hope for her future. Hugh sat thinking. "You see, Hugh," said Zab, "your comment will cause Susan to suffer." Hugh looked at Zab but said nothing, so Zab tried to push his point home. Hugh, to heal people like Susan, we first need to heal you. Hugh sat mulling it over for a few seconds and then burst out defensively, "It was a joke!" Zab was frustrated but remained calm. "No, Hugh, I'm afraid this wasn't a joke. You see, when you called Susan a nutter, she wasn't ill. She was reasonably healthy. But she became ill because of the comments made by you and your colleagues. I'm sorry to say that you made Susan mentally ill. We need to look at this. It's very important." Hugh wasn't remotely happy. He sat and thought about it for a while. "You said you need to heal me," he said finally. "Are you actually saying I'm ill?" he added in disbelief. Dr. Zab paused and breathed a slow breath out over his lips as he struggled to find the right words. "Well, Hugh, how can I put it? I think there are some issues we need to discuss." Hugh sat in silence for a while until eventually he rolled his eyes, shook his head despairingly, and without saying another word got up and walked out. Zab sighed a disappointed sigh and made a few notes in his little black notebook. That night in his quarters, Hugh lay awake staring at the ceiling. He went over all that Zab had said, over and over. In the observation room next door, the metabolism monitor detected a steady rise in adrenaline.